Okay, so welcome to Module 1. This is going to be kind of the beginning and the foundation of most of what we're going to study for this semester. We're going to really build on the tools and the instruments that we're going to use to study physical science throughout. So this is going to kind of be a foundational, not where we're studying forces and stuff like that, but this is going to be the foundation. You probably have seen this type of module or lectures in a lot of your other science classes. The first chapter tends to, I don't want to say be repetitive, but it's going to be essential. When I've spoken with people of classes that you're going to be taking in the future, for several of you, these items that we're going to cover in this chapter are going to be essential. And we'll talk about them as they come up, why they're going to be important. So you definitely want to remember to pay attention. I know some of this is going to be repetitive, but don't just be like, well, I've heard this before and assume that you remember it. Okay, so just kind of make sure, take your time, go through it, and you can watch the videos multiple times. You're going to see with these videos, this is what you'd be getting in class if you were going to a face-to-face class. But one of the great benefits of being an online class is you can pause it, you can repeat it, you can go back and watch it again. Whereas in face-to-face lecture, if you don't get it, sorry, you hope your friends got the notes for you. So take advantage of being able to watch the lecture videos multiple times. And as I said in multiple things as we're working up to this in the introduction of the course, we're going to go through and you'll see lectures from me, and then I'm going to embed lectures online, like YouTube videos. So you're going to see a lot of things over and over again. I'll put practice problems up, and so you want to practice, and then you'll have an opportunity to practice on your own. So what is physical science? So a lot of times you're going to see physical science versus life science. That's basically how most people break up the two sciences. But in reality, as much as the life sciences would not want me to say this, we're still going to study areas of life science in the physical science realm. We're going to look at blood pressure. We're going to look at fluids flowing through arteries. We're going to look at like IVs and stuff like that. So you're going to see a lot of life science being discussed in the physical science realm. So we're not going to talk about organisms, but we can talk about how bees fly. We can talk about different varieties like that. So, and we can go through and look at chemistry and everything else. So, in my opinion, and this is a selfish opinion, physical science is basically where we study everything and how things work. So, we're going to study how things work. And again, a lot of times people want to separate the life science from the physical science, but like I've already shown you, we're going to talk about a lot of things in physical science that will apply to how things in life science work. So we're going to go through and look at how things work. We're going to study a variety of things. And so how do we study these things? So the first thing we really want to look at is you come up with a question. A lot of you have seen like the scientific method. I'm not a big fan of the formal scientific method. No one does that in lab or in research, but you come up with a question and you research that question. You may look at what other people have published about that question. You may look at other resources, talk to colleagues, you want to research that question, and then you're going to do experiments. So you're going to experiment, you're going to try things out, you're going to test things. So you're going to do something. And you're going to do measurements. And then you're going to come up with a conclusion. And then you're probably going to repeat over and over and over and over again. Okay, so really, things never come to an end when you do a research project, because what happens is somebody else will pick it up, or you may want to change it a little bit or something like that. So we want to look at how do things work. So when we're not going to do a lot of research and stuff like that. We're going to stick to the basics for this class, but we want to ask how things work. How does the ear work? How do cars work? Why does a bobsled stay on the track the way it does? So we're going to look at a variety of things, like how do cameras work? How do 3D printers work? That types of thing. So how do things work in the physical world? We're going to build those tools up. So next part we want to look at is how do we measure or be able to communicate? So the measuring way is going to be a way that we communicate with others. One of my favorite sayings is communication is the utmost important in all relationships. And so when you're communicating with others in your field, you're communicating with the public, you're communicating with maybe an engineer is communicating with a technician, you're building a house and you're communicating with your contractor, units are going to be vitally important. So we want to make sure that we can communicate with others using proper units. And we'll get to those units in a second. But what are we measuring? Okay, so what are some of these things that we're going to measure? And then we want to look at what units we would use to these measurements. So time. We'll look at mass. We'll look at weight, and they are not the same thing, even though people talk about them as being the same thing. We'll look at length, area, volume, whether it's a solid or a liquid. We'll look at speed. We'll look at acceleration. We can look at forces impacting. We can look at radiation. We can look at pressure, energy, amps. We can look at resistance. We can look at focal length. We can look at wavelengths. So there are a variety of things that we can look at and measure. And so we want to be able to talk about how we're going to measure these, what they are, and how they impact the physical world. So in the next video, what we're going to actually go through and look at are the units that we would use to describe these measurements. So what unit do we use to describe time? What unit do we use to describe force? What unit do we use to describe amps? That type of thing. So in the next video, we'll go through and really focus on the units.